In this video, we're going to talk about a factoring pattern called perfect square. So in the last video, we had a very complicated difference of squares question, and we had to factor y squared plus 12y plus 36. And we ended up getting two binomials that were the exact same, and we could write it as something squared. So this actually fits a pattern called perfect square. And in general, we can say that a squared plus 2ab plus b squared, we can say that it's equal to a plus b squared. Do you have to memorize this? No, I don't think you really have to memorize it. It's good that if you can identify this type of pattern, it'll help you to factor. If you have something that's more complicated than a simple trinomial, multiple variables, it might make it easier to factor. But you don't really have to memorize the factoring because you could always write this out and figure it out because it is like a simple trinomial. So it factors down into two binomials. First of all, a squared would give you a, and b squared would give you b and b. And if you're not totally confident about the signs in here, just think about it. We would do, for FOIL, when we expand, we'd have on the outside AB, and we'd have on the inside AB. And what would we do to make it 2AB? Well, it would have to be plus and plus. Okay, so this is the pattern. I already have it written over here, so I'm just going to erase this. Let's do an example. So we have this factoring question, and you could do all the work, do the man rule, do whatever rule you have, and factor it like a regular trinomial, and that's fine. But if you recognize that it is this special pattern, you could skip right down to, well, what's my a? What's my perfect square? 100x squared is really 10x all squared. And what's my b? The last number is a perfect square, so 2 squared is equal to 4, so b is 2, and it's squared. How do you know that it's equal for sure? You could double check by expanding. Okay, so first 100x squared inside 20x outside 20x last plus 4. The middle terms will combine to make 40x. Perfect. So this works out. If you don't have the pattern memorized in this case, that's fine. You could just say, you could work it out slowly using regular factoring. Now if you were given a question like 3m squared plus 12m plus 12, like this, it doesn't seem to fit the pattern. My first term's not a perfect square, my last term's not a perfect square. But remember, when we're factoring, the first thing we always do is take out a common factor if possible. So I notice that there is a common factor between each term. What is it? It's 3. So what does that leave us with? M squared. 12 divided by 3 is 4m and 4. So now if we have the factoring pattern memorized, the perfect square, we could just write it like a plus b squared, but if you forget it, you could do it more slowly and do m. I probably want 2's, and you could write out one more step, and that's okay. With factoring, it's always great to do a little check, whether you do it in your head or write it out. It's always a good idea. So in this case, m squared times 3, 3m squared. My middle terms 2m, and 2m is 4m times 3, 12m. Checks out. My last term is 2 times 2 is 4, times 3 is 12. That checks out. Perfect. So the only kind of question we didn't do is one with negatives. And it's possible for this perfect square pattern to have negatives. So let's do a question like that. So we could have a squared minus 2ab plus b squared. And how would we factor this? So we could just work it out slowly like a regular trinomial. B squared, it looks like we want b and b. Now we need negative 2ab, so that tells us we need negative and negative, because when we do outside we'll have negative ab, subtract ab will give us negative 2ab. And we're done. Okay, so perfect squares, it can be handy to be able to recognize this pattern to help you factor, and if you're really good at memorizing patterns, then you might be able to just skip right down to the a plus b squared part. And if you're not so good at memorizing things, you can still factor like a simple trinomial. It's just helpful to recognize the pattern so you know which direction to move in. You know that from the 100 x squared here, you don't have to try to do 4 times 25 or 2 times 50. You'll know that it's going to be 10 times 10.